Hello, and welcome to the Plant Podcast, the podcast where we talk about plants. On today's episode, we're going to talk about invasive plant species, in particular, invasive plant species of Michigan. To start us off, we're going to have three different people speak about invasive Michigan plants, and then we're going to finish up by talking about some techniques to prevent their spread. First up, we have Matt speaking about the Japanese stiltgrass.
For my invasive species, I chose Japanese stiltgrass. This invasive species originated from Japan, China, and India. Japanese stiltgrass can often overrun lawn or other grasses that are in an attempt to be maintained. This invasive species was brought here through its use in packing materials, so obviously that was unintentional. Its habitat is it thrives in a place where there's common disturbances such as foot traffic, common flooding, or many other things like wind or whatever. And this plant has a wide range of habitats, so it can be found in wetlands, near highways, or even on a lawn, like I just said. These areas have common disturbances and create more opportunities for Japanese stiltgrass to spread its seed. This plant germinates in the spring and can grow up to 4 feet tall, producing up to 1,000 seeds in its lifetime. Also has the ability to self-pollinate and cross-pollinate, which is different from other plants. The damage it can create is, besides it being a pest in the yard, it can crowd out shrubs and grasses in the forest areas, which is a main food source for our deer population here in Michigan. So it could potentially limit the supply of food they have and eventually the population of our beloved deer. Methods of control, obviously in small quantities, pulling by hand works, but if your yard is particularly bad, you want to mow in the late summer because the seeds have not matured yet, and that way they won't get to reproduce. In the woods or other large areas, you're going to use a herbicide such as preen, and that's if you don't have any knowledge in the area. Professionals would use pendimethalin as a pre-emergence herbicide and cethozixum for any after growth. So in conclusion, with these effective methods, we should be able to control and limit less harmful invasive species and keep all lawns looking nice.
Thanks, Matt. And now we're going to go to John Paul, who's going to speak about the common buckthorn.
One of the many invasive species that exist in Michigan is known as the common buckthorn, which is also called the Rhamnus cathartica. The buckthorn is known as a shrub or a small tree which could grow up to 25 feet tall. The buckthorn lives up to its name by having a small, sharp thorns at the tips of its twigs. Also, this small tree produces a small purple/black fruit which is consumed by animals. The distribution of this invasive plant through the wildlife is through the wildlife, for example, birds, which is done by the consumption of fruit. And like what we learned in class, the fruit will be digested through the animal and the seed will be pooped out of the animal. The buckthorn originally comes from Europe and Asia countries, but since birds migrate because of the seasons, the seed was distributed here in Michigan. Some of the problems that this invasive species causes is that it is a host for alfalfa mosaic virus and crown fungus. Studies has been shown that it may have been the cause for soybean aphid.
Finally, we have Diego speaking about garlic mustard.
Garlic mustard, specifically known as Alaria petiolata, is an invasive herb that has spread throughout the U.S. It is especially common in the Midwest, including Michigan. While it is usually found on the ground level of disturbed woodlots and forest edges, recent findings have shown that garlic mustard has the ability to establish and spread in other areas. This spread has allowed it to become the dominant plant on the ground level of many forests. This hurts the biodiversity of many species and can push many plants to die, as the garlic mustard steals nutrients and sunlight. Many forests and forest edges have been invaded by garlic mustard, which is rare for an invasive species. Much of this invasion is due to its large seed production and dispersal. The average is likely to be in the 600 seed range, but records show that over 7,000 seeds have been created by a singular plant. The seeds germinate within 1 to 2 years, but viability lasts for upwards of 5 years. Seed dispersal is mainly by humans or wildlife carrying the seeds. The dangerous part of garlic mustard lies in how it affects surrounding plants and ecosystems. Garlic mustard usually gains control by creating a wide, dense area of plants. From here, the plants absorb most of the nutrients, sunlight, and water. Plants that grow under similar conditions in the spring and summer seasons mainly can be completely wiped out by garlic mustard. During these times, the forest floor becomes flooded with garlic mustard, sapping resources from other forest floor living plants. Many reports say that this plant hinders growth of native plant species in the long term, but this is unsupported by the lack of long-term evidence. A study conducted at Michigan State University in 2008 discovered that garlic mustard is allelopathic, which means it releases chemicals that hurt the growth of other plant species. This leads researchers to believe these chemicals hurt the relationship between native plants and fungi as well. Similarly, Michigan State University also conducted studies that resulted in the rise of plant diversity when garlic mustard was removed from forest understories.
As you can see, there are many species that can cause harm to our Michigan forests. However, there are many steps that you can take to help prevent their spread. For example, when you are hiking, try to brush off all of your boots and shoes to prevent different seeds from sticking to them. Also, you can always volunteer at your local park to help educate others about the threat and to remove these invasive species. Finally, if you're gardening, please do some research on the plants that you want to put in your garden. They may actually be invasive plants and can cause some serious harm to your local ecosystem. Thank you for listening.